Hello, my name is Luke Smith. I'm an enterprise architect here at Arcion. Today, you will learn how to configure an Oracle database for both snapshot and continuous CDC replication utilizing Arcion's enterprise CDC solution. This video will cover the setup of an Oracle 12c single tenant database. So if there's different version and or pluggable databases being utilized, there'll be extra steps that need to be followed. I'm going to put a link in the description to our documentation that'll cover those scenarios. The first thing to get started is we need to check to see whether or not our database is in archivelog mode. The easiest way to do this is to simply type in archivelog list and look at the database log mode. If it does not say archive mode, then we need to put the database into archive mode. Right now we're at no archive mode. To do this, we need to shut the database down. Then we need to mount the database. Then we need to alter the database to be in archive log mode. And then we need to open the database back up for reads and writes. I've went ahead and put all 4 commands in here, and the database is currently being shut down. All right, the instance is now shut down. Now the database will start back up in mount mode. And then we have 2 alters that'll kick off at the bottom there. All right, so it looks like it's done. So now if we archive log list again, we can now see the database is indeed in archive mode. So that's what we need. The next thing we need to do is we need to enable supplemental logging. So Arcion works with both primary key and also all column supplemental logging, though we don't want both at the same time. To check whether or not any supplemental logging is enabled right now, we can do a quick query to the $v database view, at least for these 2. And right now we can see that everything is a no. So we're going to go ahead and enable both of these. The general rule of thumb is that if you have primary keys on all your tables that need to be replicated, then you're fine to go ahead and use primary key logging. If your tables are missing some primary keys, then it's best to use all column supplemental logging. All right, now that we altered our database, let's do our query again. We can see that log data all has indeed been enabled, so we're good there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a role, and then we're going to grant that role all the permissions that our user that we're going to create is going to need in order to be able to grab the data and mine the logs to be able to replicate those changes to our target database. So first, let's go ahead and create a role. All right. And then I'm going to grant that role several changes. All right. So a bunch of permissions flew by the screen. All these are documented in our documentation. Again, link will be in the video description. I'm not going to go through these one by one because, frankly, it's a lot and you'll most likely get bored if I started going through them. All right, there are different permissions for different database versions as well as also additional permissions that are needed for pluggable databases. So definitely check out the documentation if you have either one of those scenarios. Okay, now that the role has been created and the permissions granted, we're going to go and create our user. All right, and our user is going to be replicant. So we've created a replicant user, and we just use some default table spaces here. Default table space users. We gave it an unlimited quota. And the temporary table space is just a default temp table space. Now we're going to grant that role we created to this user so that it'll have the permissions it needs. All right. And the last thing we're going to do is that in the schema that we're going to replicate, we're going to create our heartbeat table that we use to track some metadata for checkpoints and things of that nature. All right. So in that Arcion is going to be our schema name that we're going to be using to replicate later one of these videos. So I'm going to go ahead and create that table. All right, and with that, everything is set up for this Oracle to be a source database for Arcion's CDC and snapshot replication.